to really bring and shed more light to the opportunity and capabilities that the universities have, I'm going to invite Dr. Lucy Flesch, who's the Frederick L. Havda Dean of Science at Purdue University, who will serve as the moderator. Welcome, Lucy. And then she's going to be joined by an outstanding panel of university research leaders. Dr. Dan De Laurentiis, who's the fairly newly minted Executive Vice President for Research at Purdue. Welcome, Dan. Dr. Jeff Rhodes, who is the Vice President for Research at the University of Notre Dame. Go Irish. And then Dr. Russ Mumper, who's the Vice President of Research at Indiana University. Lucy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. I am honored to be here, up here with these great thought leaders at the R1 institutions in our state. As we were thinking about coming on, a lot of the discussion was about usually we get together and talk about how whose football team is going to win and where we rank in the state. And so I think this is a really big opportunity for us to come together and think about how we can be impactful in innovation and advancing all of the challenges that we heard about in the last session. It's going to take industry coming together, and it's really going to take us as academics coming together. And this is where that innovation is going to happen. And so I want to take the next half hour, 45 minutes to really talk about how we can drive that innovation as a state and as an ecosystem of universities. So this is a question I'm going to pose to each of you. And since we were talking about football, Russ, since Indiana is ranked highest, you can answer first. We'll then go to Jeff, because Notre Dame is, I think, 7 or 9, around that. And then sadly, we are not, but that's okay, Dan. Someday we might be. So
basketball.
The season is coming. So one of the advanced chemistry technology areas that we've heard a lot about from industry in the prior panel is automation, analytical chemistry, new macromolecule chemistry, and AI. Which of these areas do you feel the respective universities have the strength and foundation to build upon with the right focus and investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think Lucy knows this. I previously worked at University of Georgia and University of Alabama, and I decided to move to a real football school. So, one of the things, I mean this sincerely, is about Catalyze Indiana and the 4 technology areas. So I think it's so strategic to each of the R1s. We're comprehensive research universities, and literally we all do all 4 of those areas. I think there's unique synergy and collaboration. And many of you know the 3 universities are collaborating in many other ways. I think about the Indiana Research Consortium around STEM and microelectronics, hypersonics, and we all have strengths, but they're complementary. And I view Catalyze Indiana the same way. President Whitten may have said this. We've made significant commitments to hire faculty in the area of chemical biology, synthetic biology, and analytical chemistry, which are strategic areas of strength for us. So when I think about Catalyze Indiana, I think about continuous manufacturing, green chemistry, new types of catalysis, process analytical technology. These are the areas that we've decided to make significant investments in faculty hiring, which is one of the reasons that we're so excited about this Catalyze Indiana. And I think each of my partners here will probably emphasize other things, which makes this really exciting, because I think the underlying premise in this is that to really do great things, you really need great partners so that you can compete in the marketplace of ideas. And it really does take a team. And so we're trying to do things that I would argue no single university could do on its own, but together we complement each other.
Yeah, and maybe just to build on what Russ said, I think, many of us are doing a tour of the state this week at different events where we're talking about cooperation. And as much as we may compete on the football field, I won't talk about the outcome of the last game we played each other. The truth is we're finding amazing success collaborating in the laboratory or the digital version thereof. And it's important to note that this concept of working together has been one that all of our predecessors worked on in our respective organizations. But if you look at key successes, maybe like the Center for Bioanalytical Metrology, which is a joint industry-university collaboration between the three entities, and really the fourth R1 that's not sitting here in full form. There is just an amazing track record of working hand in hand with industry and faculty from across the universities, and more importantly, students from across all of the universities to really advance things together as a state. And I think we have seen in many examples where we collaborate, we all win together, Indiana wins together, and I think most importantly, the nation wins together in the space.
So Jeff mentioned the word predecessor. I want to start by saying, first of all, how excited I am to be here today, and also just recently was here for the wonderful grand opening of this building. But my predecessor is here. Karen Plout, are you still here? There. So let's give Karen a round of applause. Many of you in this sector know about Karen because of her research leadership at Purdue University, but also, of course, her technical expertise in many of the areas that we're talking about here, of which I don't have. So thankfully, Karen hasn't changed her cell phone number, so I still call her frequently. And a lot of what we're doing together, as Jeff mentioned, is building on years and years and years of leadership and faculty-led collaboration among the universities. I've gotten to know Russ and really appreciate and come to rely on his advice. If we're tired about arguing Purdue, Indiana sports, I went to Georgia Tech, so you had a University of Georgia background, so we can argue about that, which this year actually would be an interesting argument for once. Thank you for someone who has some connection there. That was Vince. So back to the topic. So, I mean, at Purdue, the areas that were mentioned, we have the College of Veterinary Medicine, the College of Pharmacy, the College of Science, the Purdue Polytechnic Institute, of course, our College of Engineering. I'm missing one or two that I should say, but you get the idea. Such a breadth and depth of expertise in many of these cross-cutting areas. And actually, the prior role I had at Purdue, Karen was my boss, which was great for me, was as our VP for Interdisciplinary Research Institutes and Centers in Discovery Park, for those of you who know our campus. And that's where we actually brought these kinds of expertise together to really go after sort of mission-driven, topic-specific challenges. And so the fact that we're now coalescing and able to do this at a greater scale by working with our industry partnerships and all the other partners, it's really exciting for Purdue.
So I want to hit on that collaboration note. And Jeff said, you really brought up the collaboration that you see across universities and with industry. There seems to be even more collaboration across industry that's desired. I mean, where are you seeing progress, and where do you see that opportunities that we're missing by not collaborating more seamlessly?
Yeah, so I think, at the end of the day, the fundamental role of universities is to try to be able to create the workforce of tomorrow and advance the critical understanding necessary to advance technology, the human condition, et cetera. And so any opportunity that we're not taking to do that as a collective entity, I think is a wasted opportunity. And I think there has been a real realization in academia over the last 15, 20 years that too often, historically in academia, has been about essentially a competition, in many cases mimicking what we're doing on the athletic field and trying to do that in the laboratory. And I think there's just been a beautiful transition that's not been subtle and has been driven in part by incentive structures, and I know Senator Young's going to speak next. I mean, certainly Chips with Science would be a great example of that. That is really challenging us to think about the historic model and to really think forward ahead about how we can work together. And so I think you see all of our universities, and in many cases together, not only talking about partnerships with each other, but partnerships with industry. Now, more than I would argue any time in recent history, we're seeing industry representatives, scientists, engineers, policymakers embedded amongst our faculty and on our campuses, and vice versa. We're seeing our faculties and students spending more time off campus and spending it embedded in industry. And I think anything that we can do collaboratively to accelerate that, whether it is this Catalyze project or other things ancillary to it, is just a great opportunity for us to have more effect, be more competitive in the spaces not only relevant in this room, but across the other areas of expertise that our universities share.
Well, let's drill down a little bit more on the Catalyze Indiana that we actually spent lunch talking about. And the report identifies faculty recruitment, enabling translational research, and talent development and retention as key factors to realizing Indiana's promise as a center of excellence. And so maybe, Dan, let's start with you, and we'll talk about that first piece around faculty and faculty recruitment. It's critical, and yet it's also expensive. Are there innovative ways to do public-private programs that have been launched elsewhere? And how do you view the position of our universities compared to other states on how we propose to move forward to recruit the best faculty to our universities, as well as fund the startup and everything that comes with it?
Sure, yes. So I'll just first correct you. Not all faculty are expensive, because I was just so thrilled that Purdue gave me an interview that I don't think I asked for much. And so probably they were wondering whether they should hire me because of that. But it was an interesting experience to go through that. But I'll come back to a more relevant example of something that just happened at Purdue about 1.5 years ago. We hired in our aspirations and our programs to really look across the country for just the best talented folks, especially those who were, really emerging as leaders in their area. And we landed an amazing faculty by the name of Professor Erin Dunn, who was hired through our College of Liberal Arts. And she came into our Discovery Park area, and she was attracted to that ethos of interdisciplinary work and really being surrounded by people that could both complement her and her group, but challenge them to think even broader about the needs that they had in the innovation. And so that was exciting and an example in and of itself. And then she discovered our Purdue at Indianapolis campus, and our leader, David Umalis for Purdue at Indianapolis, is in the back of the room there. And she's now working, and her lab is here. And part of that reason was she wanted to be closer to also the talent that we have here in Indy, both in the industry, but also on the IU campus and the medical school and such. And so, again, back to kind of the themes that have been reiterated on Catalyze Indiana, finding those ways that our partner universities, our partner companies, and everything in between can add to that attraction. And I would say it's a good time to be doing that, because the three of us here on the stage tend to not want to read the news in the morning because we don't know what the federal government is going to be throwing at us that particular day in terms of the research landscape. But what is happening is that faculty across the country who are thinking about where they are at their university and the kinds of perhaps headwind, it's opening people's minds that maybe there are other places in the country that could be home for me. And I think the three of us and all of us here are committed to answering the phone for those people.
So,
Yeah, I'll just say, the three universities, as you can imagine, we continually hire faculty. President Whitten talked about the Faculty 100 initiative. I think the Catalyze Indiana hiring initiative is different in a really important way that I certainly appreciate, and I hope you appreciate. Other states, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, these were highlighted in the Catalyze Indiana report, have had these strategic statewide hiring initiative, and they really focus on two themes. One theme is to become, in whatever area you're recruiting. Texas was cancer and nanotechnology, for example, is to be the preeminent center of excellence in the country, if not the world, by coming together as a group and hiring a large number of the best and brightest in these four areas. So it's a strong desire and vision to become really a national center of excellence that hopefully nobody could compete with. Okay. The second one is also very important. It is to for the faculty that we recruit as a prerequisite that they are interested or dedicate themselves to what we call translational research activities, working with industry, invention disclosures, patents, starting companies, so that the students that we train and that graduate will stay in the state and work for the companies that we create or the companies we partner with or the companies that the state recruits. So those two elements are really unique, and I think what has generated a lot of excitement for the initiative.
Well, maybe I will follow up with that question with you. We talked, and Jeff talked a little bit about this, the old model of a faculty member in their lab doing their work, and maybe they would do some sponsored research programs. What are ways that we can be innovative with attracting people and the top researchers to our state with collaboration, joint appointments, sabbatical leaves, really integrating almost a industry to academic space for our faculty that can maybe be more attractive?
Yeah, we've talked a lot jointly about this whole idea of a reciprocal sabbatical where our industry partners would have the opportunity to come and interact with our faculty so that our faculty could learn from our industry partners and perhaps integrate that into their teaching, research, defining new academic programs, helping to keep them contemporary. But the opposite is true, that we see great opportunity for our faculty to go for a period of time, whether it's a week, a month, or 6 months, and do a kind of an industry sabbatical so that they could understand contemporary issues, many that we've been talking about even today, and bring that back to enhance our academic programs, which then has a direct positive benefit on workforce development, so that as we're training our students, they're become familiar with the challenges of our time, so that they are in as high demand as possible when they leave our institutions.
So I was going to say, Jeff, what else? I mean, we've sort of talked about what else is at play. What are other things we can do to be innovative to attract the top faculty to our state?
So I think it's important to start with what drives the need for mechanisms, and I think Russ touched on this a little bit. Today's faculty, the floor is to be scholarly excellent, right? I think more often than not, our faculty, they want to be scholarly excellent and have translational impact. They want to improve the human condition. They want to improve society. And so they have to have mechanisms to do that. So whether that's the opportunities that Russ talked about or others, we now have to build structures in place and be purposeful and be collaborative to create the opportunity for them to go out and actually have translational impact. And so whether that is through embedding in companies, whether it's enabling them to start their own companies that could partner with the larger companies, all of these mechanisms have to be in place now. And I think, credit to, kind of Collective Team Indiana, working with our friends in the room and others, we've been able to generate that. And I think now we're also starting to take a more Midwestern writ large perspective and thinking outside of the state boundary. And I just think if we can continue to do that, we can continue to be the differentiated person or differentiated entity that Russ talked about in examples like Texas and other places around the U.S.
So I want to switch a little bit from faculty, now thinking about facilities, which is another aspect of the Catalyze Indiana report. So Jeff, Notre Dame leads the Center for Bioanalytical Metrology, which was identified in the Catalyze Indiana report as a model for university-industry collaboration for the larger advanced chemistry effort. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this center and how it might serve as a roadmap for us moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this has been a long-established program seeded by the National Science Foundation. And I think all of us, we have not only joint work in that area that you talked about, Lucy, but also in cybersecurity and quantum and others that we share amongst the three organizations. What is beautiful about that so-called IUCRC model is it often brings industries together to think about pre-competitive work that kind of raises the collective boats. And I think if you think about what is at the core of the Catalyze proposal or some of the other collaborative activities we're talking about today. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise the floor of the background ecosystem so that everyone can win more effectively at lower cost, have the talent that we need to operationalize that. And I think that's just a great formal mechanism that shows the collaborative nature, gives us that this is not a wild, crazy idea. We have a good proof of concept that's been working now for 7-8 years. And we actually have translational success stories that we can definitively point to that says a Purdue and IU and a Notre Dame faculty member and their students came together with industry partners to do X or to do Y. And we could point to very specific examples in that regard. And I think that's a powerful thing to continue to build upon and frankly accelerate.
So that's a great example, and I want to ask Dan and Russ. I mean, the Catalyze Indiana report says that we must invest in these types of shared modular pilot facilities. And how do we take it to the next step with some of the next generation robot and lab automation tools that are accessible to startups, academic researchers, and industrial partners alike, many of the things that they talked about needing in the previous panel. How do you see research universities engaging, and how do we elevate our work in this space?
Yeah, I'll say facilities, infrastructure, contemporary environments are absolutely key for two reasons. And I referred to one of them already, is there is an absolute fierce competition for the best talent in the country. The types of scholars that we're envisioning with our partners in industry and CICP and the 3 universities here and Rose-Hulman, these are, potentially National Academy members. They have their choice to go many different places. And so we have to, so we're just in a competition no different than our football programs and needing to recruit new talent and wanting to show them great facilities. It's very similar to that. So we're in fierce competition. I think the other thing is and you heard a lot about this today, the types of challenges and opportunities we have in One Health and human health and plant and animal health. These take very highly sophisticated technologies, automation, AI. They are not the old laboratories that I trained in 30, 40 years ago. And so facilities are absolutely key. And I think the other thing that I think I appreciated about the Catalyze Indiana is that, in the past kind of university, this was university's problem. Each of us would deal with this in our own way, dealing with trying to upgrade space, and we still do that. But this is a program, Catalyze Indiana, that is doing something for the greater good with a very ambitious goal and having a collective pool of resources for the good of the whole group, and that's really exciting.
I'm just going to combine the last 2 questions if I can, because it really all does come together. So, facilities and the possibilities that they bring and the partnerships are absolutely critical to attracting those folks who aren't here. By the way, President Chang likes to talk about the situation we might be in with faculty across the country as the transfer portal for academia.
I hope they don't start name, image, likeness for faculty.
Yeah.
I don't think we could make as much as our students,
Yes.
but we could try.
Yes. So I might have started for a topic for another panel that we could have together. But really what attracts the faculty and the graduate student talent is if we can infect their minds with big ideas and the inspiration to go after those big ideas that are going to change the world, and yes, build Indiana into the recognized hub. I mean, that's the multiplicative factor, because frankly, for you industry partners, if you can get a faculty member really infected with the idea that is part of your mission and your need, you get pretty much their brain for 24 hours, even if you may only be sponsoring 10. So the facilities, the mentality, the think big mantra, but you have to have, you can't just advertise big, you have to have those facilities and those mechanisms in place. And then you also have to have, I think, the venues and the opportunities for the unexpected collisions that really, let's face it, are often as big a part than the architected you need a good amount of top-down architecting of all this ecosystem, but you also need those venues where people can just like be totally blown away by someone who's solving their problem but in a different field, and if they never would have met them, that's a lost opportunity, to one of the earlier questions.
So I want to hit on Dan's comment about inspiring the next generation of scientists, because our collective universities graduate more than 4,000 undergraduates majoring in various chemistry disciplines, but we have a very poor in-state retention rate. How do we work hard as a collective sets of universities to continue to retain these students in the state, to become part of the workforce in the state? What is the best approach, and are there newer and more innovative methods that we should be using?
Yeah, I'll say at IU, we talk a lot about internal alignment and external alignment. I think you heard a lot of people this morning talk about external alignment, aligning the R1 universities with the startup ecosystem, with business industry leaders, with state initiatives. That's the external alignment. We also think about internal alignment. Like, one of the great opportunities we have for all of us being comprehensive research universities is we can offer students great experiences that are highly differentiated in the marketplace as they leave. And when we talk about internal alignment, is that ideally the type of research we do, and we want to involve students in that process. So Catalyze Indiana and the 4 technology areas are one example of that. The Indiana Research Consortium in STEM and microelectronics, hypersonics is another one. But you align that with the emphasis on what I call high-demand academic degree programs, so that you can align the academic programs of emphasis with the research you're doing. And as you do more research and have more breakthroughs, they can inform kind of what I call high-demand contemporary degree programs, which drive enrollment. And so that internal alignment is really key, because we want to respond to what, the types of things that students are interested in, and provide them opportunities for immersion in research that advance the university's strengths in the investments we've made. So we think a lot about that.
And I would just add, I think students, when they think about where they're going to take the next step in their career, think about place a lot. And the way I think many of them think about place is, can they see themselves embedded in that environment? And so the opportunities, whether it is to provide them the internship experiences, which Catalyze includes, or other mechanisms like that for them to see themselves embedded in the next step of their career. So it's not hard for them to imagine, because they've lived it in a kind of precursor sense. I think it's just a powerful thing. And that experiential learning, or the open-ended problems associated with research, provide a hook that is intoxicating, frankly, at some level from a scholarly perspective. And I think, if we can provide those opportunities, it's the Field of Dreams problem. If you can build it, they will come.
I would just say, first of all, again, back to Catalyze Indiana, that, this concept of even further expanding internships is absolutely a no-brainer, and we have to do that. How about this bold idea? How about we have a requirement for all of those 4,000 graduating students that they have to go on a day-long field trip, paid field trip, across the state and see all of these amazing places that could be home for them in Indiana. I think that would be well worth the gas money for the bus. You can fit, 500 students on a bus, right, Jeff? I mean, it's affordable.
You're an engineer.
Oh, yes. I'm not a very good engineer, apparently. Because, we're never going to get maybe the vast majority of those students in internships, but it's seeing that for themselves that I think is critical. And, again, across our universities, the students who do come to our universities, of course, we have the best of the best in the state of Indiana, but we have students from all over the country and the world. And for them to not see what Indiana has to offer, that would be shame on us.
So as we start to look forward, what are some of the low-hanging fruit that could possibly give Indiana an advantage over other states and regions, particularly on the research level? What does our collective scientific expertise and other assets position us for One Health leadership? And what do you think we need to do moving forward to make that possible? Russ, I'll let you start, and we can.
Well, I would say, first of all, we have to define where we want to go. I feel under President Witten's leadership, we've done that. We've made major commitments to recruit faculty, new degree programs aligned to where IU, believes that it could be a leader. I think we have a very, certainly since in President Witten's tenure, to have a much more outward view of the role of Indiana University as a major university to the state. And that involves something that I said before, translational research activities, working with industry, getting patents, starting companies, and we're very intentional about this. So one of the things that we've done, and we're doing this across the university, is updating all of these, the criteria for the recruitment, evaluation, and promotion of faculty to articulate that we value all of these things. In fact, this is something that I've seen in many other universities in many states. They tend not to say and emphasize these translational research activities. And so I think the future's bright if we can do that. I have conversations with people in many different states that value a comprehensive research university as a contributor to the economic development. But I know firsthand, just from sitting in the seat that I sit in now, that a lot of the entrepreneurial startup activities at a university are usually like 10% of the faculty. So imagine the opportunities you could harness if you had 20, 30, 40% of the faculty thinking about working with industry, starting companies. So I think this is a component of Catalyze Indiana. So this is really exciting for the future because it'll help to align us and harness us, and we'll be able to utilize that as a really positive avenue for change.
Yeah, and if I could riff off that, I would just say, to me, part of that, and you touched on this briefly, you have to be able to align internal incentives, right? I think faculty have always been geared, promotion and tenure is at the forefront of their mind. They think about the scholarly bars that they have to clear at our respective institutions. But the truth is that if you can change those incentives for faculty to be, whether it's their compensation, whether it is promotion and tenure, I think there's great opportunity. But that in and of itself is not enough. It's a critical step. But you also then have to make it so that, frankly, universities are more business friendly, right? And I think many of us could do examples where I think these three universities are really taking leadership nationally and thinking about ways of being more business friendly, including changing fundamentally some of the business models that have traditionally underpinned ourselves as we think about things like intellectual property. I think in my first 6 months, I spent more time talking about intellectual property than I thought I ever would in my role, right? But the truth is that what university return is on intellectual property, as an example, is often not anywhere near the impact that we can have financially even on the institution, rather than if we're going after large projects and having translational impact in our communities. And so it's just a different mindset about how we think about the future. And I think it's one where Indiana universities in particular could be very business friendly, maybe the model example in the nation to get us to the next step.
Well, on the topic of the kind of scientific areas, I'm actually shocked here. We've gone through this entire panel, and one phrase hasn't been mentioned that shocks me, and one has. So hypersonics was mentioned by Russ, nonetheless. So that was amazing to me. But the one that we haven't mentioned, the phrase, is artificial intelligence, and I mean that's the over everything and in everything, right? It's not one of the scientific areas. President Chang may have mentioned just about a mile away from here today, we have the Purdue IPI, Institute for Physical AI, and Google Summit going on, and guess what they're talking about? Of course, AI in everything, including in the health and life sciences. So that is the challenge, and if we are not just, when outside talent looks at us and they don't just see AI infusing all of our endeavors in a very loud manner, all of the rest of the mechanisms we've talked about, in my humble opinion, are going to not be enough. The future of everything we do, from design, development, manufacturing, and everything in between, is just so instrumental with AI.
So we have just a few seconds left, but I want to not forget that this is an academic exercise. So I'm going to ask all of you one last question, and I want the shortest answer. But what will you do? What is your takeaway? What is the first thing that you want to do to continue the momentum and to move this forward to catalyze Indiana?
I think I'm very action-oriented, so we've done, I think, a great job of working with partners, CICP, give them a lot of credit for executing a vision that was shared by a lot of the industry partners and bringing the universities forward. So I'd like to get going. So that's going to involve a lot of faculty hiring, new degree programs, training programs, new facilities, and I'm excited to kind of get that underway as soon as possible.
Excellent.
And maybe related to that, I think the bane of partnerships is complacency. And so I think it's really important for all of us to not be complacent. The problems that we're talking about today, we can't forget about tomorrow, and we're on talking about the next subject, like hypersonics, Dan's favorite. We have to keep this in mind as well. And so the ability to multitask and not be complacent, I think, is really key.
So the clock shows 0, and my one-word answer is ditto.
Well, I want to thank the three of you for a really just fascinating and insightful conversation, and I look forward to working with all of you to see what the future brings.
Thank you.